You want to introduce? Sure. Okay. All right. Let's, what time is it? There we go. It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, January 17th. Let's call this work session to order. Can I throw it over to you?
Sure. With us tonight, we have Stacy Griffin from IMWCA and Dean Shade from IMWCA. They wanted to come talk to you about some of the changes that they'd like to see us. We've had some high claims in the past. Our claims have come down. Our experience model is good, but there's still some things that we probably need to work on as a city. I've known Dean since the mid '80s. He and I went to grad school together. Dean was a city administrator, city manager before he got in with IMWCA in the league. And I worked with Dean on some of these same issues when I was in Nevada. So, and then behind Dean, we've got Travis. And Travis, I did not remember your last name. Cutler. Travis is with Gallery, who does a lot of underwriting, and we work through. So,
Can you say what IWCA stands for?
it's the Iowa Municipal Workers Compensation Association. No, yeah.
Yep.
Compensation Association, and they're part of ICAP. ICAP and IMWCA.
Well, no.
Well,
part of the
they're
league,
separate.
but we're
They're part of the league. ICAP is the Iowa Community Insurance Pool, which is the pool. IMWCA is with the League of Iowa Cities, and they partner together to provide the insurance services to municipalities and counties, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Counties 2080s.
But you don't do school districts like they do
No.
with the pool that I was in Missouri, so.
Okay. In my role, I'm your broker.
Okay,
I work with the most of the day-to-day, but for the placement and work with ICAP and IMWC to place for insurance, plus also answer the line outside of it.
perfect. Thank you.
Sounds good. We're ready to hear what you have for us tonight.
All right, so like you said, like Dave said, my name is Stacy Griffin, and my title with IMWCA is Safety and Risk Improvement. So part of my job duties is to go around and I cover the eastern side of the state. So I meet with all of our members on a routine basis. And we cover safety programs, we cover the financial information, your experience modification factor, premiums, claims, all those sorts of things. So once a year we come around, and before that meeting with the city, or usually with this, in your case, the city safety committee, I go through and I look at and do an analysis of the city's claims and finances and your premium versus those. And when West Liberties came up at the end of last year, we've noticed a high trend. So what's going on is we've got a high number of claims, and we've also got in that some expensive claims. As Dave mentioned, IMWCA is a pool. So that means that all of the members go together to fund everybody else. So when we look at numbers, we want to make sure that you're contributing to the fund and not draining the fund, so to speak. And what we have found out through West Liberty situation, only being with us for 8 years, you guys joined the pool back in fiscal year 14-15. You guys are actually, you're drawing down our fund balance. You're pulling from our fund balance. So what we're here to do tonight is kind of give you those pieces of information, answer any questions that you may have on those. We can go over the generic information that we kind of presented at the safety committee meeting. And then we'd like to lay out with you guys the plan going forward. So what's happened with West Liberty is because of the numbers that have flown, or the numbers that have been generated through our reports. West Liberty is now on what's called our high level RMAP program. RMAP stands for Risk Management Action Plan, which just means we're wanting you to team up with us to do some more safety program, create a safety culture within West Liberty, so that we can not only bring down the number of claims, but in that we're also going to bring down the severity. So when we talk numbers, we can talk amount of claims, we can talk finances, we can talk cost of claims. But in our
Can I
world,
pause you for 1 second?
absolutely.
I just have to ask all the dumb questions so I understand what
Nope,
we're talking about.
no, there
Can
isn't
you-
such a thing.
When you talk about claims, let's just make sure we're all understanding exactly what you're talking. What would be an example of some of the claims that West Liberty has had?
Okay, so IMWCA is only going to cover your workers. So we don't cover any citizens that were injured in any way, shape, or form. So this is strictly workers' comp. I apologize, I didn't step.
So injuries on the job.
Yes,
We're
so
talking
these,
about.
yep, so these would be injuries on the job.
Yeah.
And we can go over specifics, we can run reports for you, we can go
Yeah,
over.
That's probably enough for now. I just wanted to make
Yep.
sure I was clear about
Yes,
what
Yep.
angle we're talking about.
yes, I apologize, yes,
Yep.
that's, so yeah, it's strictly on the job injuries by your employees that are on your payroll that
Yep.
get a W-2 from the city.
Okay,
So like I said, what we want to do is we're going to lay out this program, the requirements that the city has to fulfill in partnership with us. We're not just giving you a list of to-do. We're saying we want you to partner up with us. I'm going to make routine visits I'm only about an hour away, so I can come up as many times as necessary. And like I said, we're gonna want buy-in from the city, and again, it starts at the council level, so we need you guys on board with us to make sure that we can change the culture of West Liberty as far as safety is concerned. I'm not sure what pieces of information you guys want to know, but IMWCA workers' compensation in general operates on what's called an experience modification factor, or a mod. And what that number is, that takes into account your payroll. It takes into account the job duty associated with those payroll. So everybody gets a class code, and then there's rates associated with those nationwide. We buy into those even though we don't have to. We do utilize those. So those are thrown, and also in, your claims are thrown into there. So inside of all of that, that's thrown into this very convoluted formula that goes to our underwriter, and it spits out this experience modification factor. If you paid us in premium, what we paid out in losses all the time, you would have an experience modification factor of 1. So anything obviously above that is we have work to do. Anything below that, then, you know, you're doing okay. Right now, so we run on fiscal year, so we're halfway through this year right now. The city is at a 1.25. And I will tell you that's down from a 1.42 the previous year. Those numbers are based on 3 years. They come on and drop off, so it's a rolling year, and they're usually about a year behind. By the time the premium kicks in, we're a full year behind, just because of the numbers that have to be calculated.
Yeah, clarify that real quick.
Absolutely.
The experience modification is a comparison of your peers. So if you have a 1, it means you're having claims on average with your peers. So it doesn't compare you to Iowa City directly, but does, and it scopes it down through statistics through payroll. You'll have the same type of operations, police department, fire departments, like departments, garbage, as other cities. So it compares you that way as operations, but not strictly apples to apples. We expect in Iowa City the world to have more claims than West Liberty of the world do. If the mod is over 1, so 140, 175, whatever the number would be, means you're having claims above your peers in comparison. And as a result, you're getting surcharged with premium. If it's under 1, it means that statistically you're having claims less than your peers, and you get a credit as a result of that. So we, as on the insurance side, focus a lot on the experience modification because it's a good indication of how you're performing against your peers.
And a question, so do our peers also have their own utility? Do they?
So there's about 10 class codes on your policy. It's basically got to move to. So there's police department, there's fire, there's garbage, there's electrical, there's law grounds crews, there's clerical. So if a city didn't have some service, so some communities don't have their own police departments, that class code wouldn't be on their code, but it's on yours. So that's how you can get communities to be compared against each other, even though they don't look exactly the same.
Okay.
So like I said, right now we're sitting at a 1.25. You are projected to be at a 0.94 next year. However, in IMWCA world and kind of what we talk about in safety and risk improvement is that's more luck than skill. So like I said, that's what we're here to do, is kind of correct that. We want a safety culture. We want to make sure that people are going home. In the past 5 years, so if you look at the last 5 completed years, so not the current year that we're in, IMWCA and its pool has spent about $960,000 on West Liberty's claims, and there were 17 of them. These are actual claims. I know city staff will know that you're supposed to call an 800 number if you suspect any sort of a claim. These are only ones that actually had medical costs associated with them and potentially some indemnity as well.
What was the time frame on those 17 claims again?
So last 5 completed years. So anything from 7/1 of 2017 through 6/30 of 2022.
Okay.
Is the time frame that we're looking at.
Not to take away from Stacy's correct, the mod and things can be improved. There is a $600,000 claim, the train accident on there too, so.
I was gonna ask that.
Even if we pull it out, the numbers aren't great, it's better, but there's still room for improvement, but that obviously drives into that.
That I was wondering about that, so thanks for addressing that. That certainly skews our numbers a bit. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Now, there's still claims, there's shoulder claims, there's some ball claims, there's still areas for improvement, but that skews quite a bit.
Even with that big claim out, we're still in the situation where the pool is subsidizing the city,
Even without that.
even without it.
So we
That's
looked at, like I said, RMAP, risk management action plan. When we look at any entity that has had more, that they're what we call a loss ratio. So what you paid us in premium versus what we paid out in losses. Anytime we get over 100%, we consider you consider you eligible for RMAP. And the city was eligible for RMAP, so we had over that in 17, 18, 18, 19. And then this past year in 21, 22, we were at 95%, so we were close.
And understand, anytime that we're over a 70%. 73%, because we have our overhead, so if you're at 73% loss ratio, we break even. So at 95%,
The loss ratio is every dollar you pay in for an honest, they pay out in claims and expenses.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, if you're running a business, cost of goods sold, is kind of the insurance company's cost of goods sold is.
And that's no different than the pool that I belong with in Missouri. You really, that 73% is kind of that sweet spot. You prefer to be under there. Yeah, if you're over there.
And for the benefit of the West Liberty, 73% is for employment, like I have to say, is way higher, meaning they keep less of your dollars than a private company like a Travelers or EMC of the world. So they're able to kind of keep pricing lower when you perform well because they have lower expense ratios than for profits. Why the pooling mechanisms are set up for municipalities.
and one thing, we've talked a lot about money here. Really, the bottom line is, we can sit there and shoot to break even, but what we want to do is help you get into the 10, the 20% loss ratios, because if we do that, and I hope when we move your right now, your premium is high. So even if we get you to 30% with what you're paying in premium, it still means you're having some larger losses. If we can get your premium down and get the loss ratio down, what that really means is we're not having people getting hurt.
Right.
That's the main goal, is
Bottom line.
what we're really about.
And there's a bunch of soft costs with injury, workers' injuries that aren't dealt with work comp. So working overtime expenses because their guys on time off because he can't work, or just his inefficiencies because he got to run to the doctor or whatever, get a treatment. Bringing in temp labor to maybe bring up some of those, there's lots of soft costs that the city incurs themselves. OSHA thinks it's about 2 times for every dollar they spend, and OSHA thinks it's about $2 you spend on soft costs. So even driving down the loss ratio helps the work comp premium, but helps the city indirectly through more efficiencies.
So you're saying above this 960,000, we have incurred even more?
Yeah, larger claim is gonna be a little smaller, right? But
Okay.
the way he was off in the hospital, he wasn't here working.
Yeah.
So you had to hire an employee, you was sitting on paying for the work comp system.
Yeah.
So the city incurred a fair amount of expenses outside of work comp for that injury.
And you're paying him benefits while he's
Mhm.
unable to work.
Right.
Not to harp on financial stuff, but we aside from the big loss in the garbage department, we've got some larger losses in your police department too. So if we take away the garbage department, they were 68% of your total losses. So, they're just over half of all your losses. So there's another issue here that we're looking at. Your police department attributes 31% of your total losses, and we've got 3 decent sized ones there. We've got $142,000 on a shoulder, a $90,000 on a knee, and then a $26,000 on another knee. The anomaly that I'd like to bring up to you guys, and I brought this up at the safety meeting, is not a single one of these police department claims where these officers performing police duties in any way, shape, or form. We have lots of claims in our world right now of, suspects or inmates beating up on officers all over the place. Yours were more environmental than anything else. Your officers not paying attention.
Go ahead.
Is that the statistics and costs that you just shared, is that from this last fiscal year?
No, they're from the previous
5
5 years
years.
combined. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
And one thing that stands out, I just meant we have a law enforcement advisory committee. And we ran claims history. For a small, and you guys are a smaller community compared.
Mhm,
Your 3 large claims over 20 grand
mhm.
really stand out. I mean,
Yeah,
I have departments of 30 officers. They don't have that.
right, and I believe that related to maybe a larger problem that we sort of the city sort of didn't realize, and the problem has since gone. So I'm hoping that that will,
Well, there's still one of those
Change.
claims that happened in the last year.
yes, but I mean, the larger part of that, I'm guessing, I'm only making a,
Well, it
And we're gonna help you with that.
Okay.
That's part of what our process is gonna help
Okay.
you determine.
Yep, we're gonna bring these to light for you and bring these, you know, it's easy to sit in my position with all the data that I have in front of me. To be able to bring these to light in front of you, but I do know that, I personally was here with my predecessor back in 2019 in the summer,
Yes,
and we did bring that attention to the
Yeah.
issues with the police department, so.
yes, because we were unaware that there was a lot of extra baggage.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that cost is predominantly from that one individual or not,
Well,
but
there's 3 separate individuals, so the claims that I mentioned are, the 3 claims are 3 separate individuals.
3 separate.
Yep, and from what I understand, there's still 2 of them employed. Right,
Okay.
excuse me. So I did a little bit of a trending, I took away those claims that we talked about. And I said, okay, now where are we at? Where does the city see? So I looked at body parts, so we have the frequency in body parts, so I looked at those. You do have 3 claims that are shoulders. We have a trip, we have an officer that was pulled down by a dog. Then we had an issue in the garbage department again, with an issue with a dumpster. And then I looked to see what the most costly are, and those are heads. We had about $15,000 in head claims in the last 5 years. And both of those were slips on ice. So, slip, trips and falls, while they are huge, in IMWC in general, they're a very, very significant portion of the claims here in West Liberty.
Okay.
So in IMWCA, and again, workers' compensation in general, when you have an indemnity claim, which means those people are off, that we are paying their wages, you're not paying their wages. Those are considered an indemnity claim. And what happens in that whole experience modification factor, when those claims get put in there, 100% of the costs spent on those claims go into that experience modification factor. If we can keep those medical only, so if we can get your employees back as soon as possible, doing light duty, modified duty, those types of pieces, we discount those by 70%. So in the last 8 years, so with your history with us, usually we go back 10, but so you guys, it happens to be 8, we've had 7 indemnity claims. If we look at the last 5 years, which is kind of the trend we've been working with, we still have 5 indemnity claims. So obviously a return to work program, returning to work would be huge for the city. And I know that we talked about this at the safety meeting, there was some miscommunication that we hope to have solved. If not, we'll keep on it. We'll watch those.
To clarify, return to work programs is stressed by almost any work comp provider, private or public. It just basically means bringing an employee back within their doctor's restrictions, maybe in their duty they have normally, or in a modified duty. So there's lots going on in the city that they might be a garbage driver, truck driver, normally we can't do that. But assigning to a different role. There's lots of statistics that say when you bring someone back, the cost of claim, the recovery time lowers quite a bit. So we want to get the employee back to work as quickly as possible for both our sake and their sake.
Makes sense.
I didn't know we didn't have a return to work program, so good info.
Yeah, most employees, they want to be back to work. It's their social structure. I mean, it's hard for people to understand, but we have people that when we bring them back to work, they heal faster. Because they're not sitting at home thinking about my shoulder hurts. And they just resolve better. But it also, for that very small minority that might like to use work comp as a vacation, it also says that ain't gonna happen.
Right. I thought that although I don't know if we have a clear written in stone policy, I thought we
It's
did.
in our
Okay.
handbook.
Okay, so we.
I
do.
sent Stacy a copy of what the current plan is.
Okay,
But
'Cause-
their HR person had sent me some additional information, and I said, if our plan didn't quite meet everything that they wanted to see, then we can certainly adopt other things from their plan to put into ours.
'Cause-
And the city's had it since 2017.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the employees that I knew of that had that, you know, under that circumstance did come back and were reshifted in duties. So I thought that was
And maybe
already in place.
Stacy and Dean can address this, but where we have a problem with the return to work is at the supervisor level.
Okay,
I think the supervisors need to have some training or the education
Okay.
to know how to manage that return to work. Because we identify that they can return to work to do, you know, administrative work, you know, at the desk kind of work,
yeah,
but we get pushback from the supervisors
Okay.
as far as they don't know how to manage that or
okay,
what to do with it. So I think that is definitely a piece that's missing on the return to work is educating supervisors on, you know,
yeah, okay.
to
okay.
manage what we have been doing.
I thought that more often than not, we did have them return in some capacity.
And I mean, we've had situations where, you know, one, you know, he was chomping at the bit to return, but unfortunately his injuries, you know, and then we did have him come back in slowly, but his injuries he still had issues with injuries.
Do we have issues with the other perspective in this, which is the doctor, the medical field, not maybe being as quick responding in assessing, you know, when is a good time to return? I mean, or is that
I
not a
mean,
problem?
that's definitely a question for, so,
I mean,
you know, again,
is
I'm
that-
not a doctor, so I don't know.
Do you find that
assess
to be an
that,
issue or?
Like, is there a
Sometimes,
pattern of the provider that these people are going to, who they are going to?
well, and one thing is that Iowa is one of the few states that allows the employer to pick the provider.
Okay,
You can designate they call it designated position, but it's provider because it may be more of a clinic than a single individual. We recommend dealing with a clinic that has occupational health background,
okay,
because that's what they specialize in. Just like if you got a heart condition, you want to go to a cardiologist.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to send them to a GP for a work-related incident, you know,
right,
especially if it's their own personal doctor, because they're gonna say, doc, you know, I need 2 weeks off. Well, yeah, okay, because I want to treat your wife, your kids, and everybody else, you know.
okay,
So you want to really look at your designated provider policy and develop a relationship with them where you meet with them, get to know them, they get to know you. Because our most successful programs, you know, when the doctor says, hey, I know they have a return to work. And the supervisor will send, you know, here's a list of things that we have. You know, can this employee do any of these? And the other thing that a really good return to work program doesn't only look at the department of the individual, and that's where you start. But you might sit there, we have a county, for example, doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a sheriff's deputy, conservation, whatnot. If you're under really rigorous return to work, you're gonna go set up at the scale house at their recycling center. Cause all you gotta do is sit there and read the scale. That's it. And so they have that on the list.
So I can give you I'll give them an example of what, so we have a current employee that recently was injured and has, and I'm supervising that individual's light duty. And what I do is when I receive the report from the doctor with the limitations, then I sit down with that employee and we talk about what their duties are. And then we work together to modify. And then I have that individual tell me, you know, absolutely what duties, because if you don't have a use of a certain limb or something, tell me what duties you absolutely cannot do. And then we modify it, and then, you know, a lot of times we'll assign it over into other situations with, for example, for the police department, is again, sitting down and we say we modify. And there are administrative things, or, a lot of times policies and procedures always can use additional, that person can sit at the computer and pulling up and researching and doing administrative work like that. But again, it comes back to who's gonna supervise or who's going to manage what that individual is doing, because the thing is, we have very limited, light duty items, because most everything we have are, it requires, and the only other thing we have is some administrative work. So I think that would be good too, is just going through this process to maybe we have more, we just haven't identified them yet. So I have like.
There you go.
Lee, to clarify, if I'm wrong, I thought you guys were in the process of changing your occupational health provider. About 15 instead of Iowa City.
I was made aware at the last safety committee that it had came up that there was an interest to.
There was an interest, but then we've talked about it and we've heard that, well, that Muscatine may not be any better than where we're at in Iowa City.
Well, the last that I talked about was we were looking at
Riverside.
Riverside.
So they would have to drive to Riverside.
Well,
It's either-
right now, they're driving to Corville, which is where we set up occupational health, and we've had some issues there, but I think Lee had said that we used Muscatine in the past and we had some of the same
did.
issues.
That's we changed to who we're working with now through the recommendation through workman's comp. That's how we partnered with UI Works. It's a part of the university, and just as Dean was saying, it's specialized in occupational health.
So they used to, maybe they have more than one location.
Yeah.
Because they were like deep down in the basement in hospital. And you're saying they're related, but in clinic in Corrigal.
They are, on Lion Drive.
From what I understand.
Oh, okay,
It's up by
gotcha.
the, used to be the gas fees.
And what has happened is over the years, university employees understand this. So downsizing has turned it from just an occupational health clinic into a multi-purpose clinic. So therefore, a lot of the problems are, you could send an employee at 8 o'clock in the morning, but they may not get in until 11 o'clock because the providers are also seeing, other. So I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the impact, because of the combination of where they went from just strictly being occupational. Now they are a combined clinic where they're doing
Multitasking.
more than that. So again, I mean, that's not uncommon, because even in Riverside, that is more than just an occupational clinic. In addition, it's a family practice clinic, and I think they have couple other specialties there. So I think today it's going to be a challenge to find any clinic out there that does not have that multi-purpose, that it's not specifically that. But again, I don't know if there's some recommendations for,
The real concern is not their involved,
Yeah.
if they're strictly out of health, it's great.
Yeah.
But it's building a relationship with your health provider, so they know, see what somebody has a early return work program, here's a list of duties that they may or may not be able to accommodate. So if a doctor understands duties the
Gotcha.
employee may have opportunities to fulfill with unlike duty,
Yeah.
the individual is more likely to write the restrictions to fit those duties.
Gotcha.
If we don't really know, they have a return work program, but we really don't know what is available to them. And they'll be real broad, but they can't stand more than 15 minutes, they can't lift
Yeah.
this. And they'll write a lot more specific if you have a relationship with it. Now, doctors turn over and move, and that makes it difficult, but that's really the focal point of directing care. Is yes, occupational health doctors is great, that's step one. Step two is developing a relationship with that facility so they know who you are and what's available.
So is something like that, you're talking about a part of an action plan that you're preparing, that would be for City Hall to say, make sure that the doctor has that list? Is that kind of something you're gonna help us with, or?
These recommendations, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if that's something that we need to do, we can definitely, we poll every department and say, what are some light duty, modified duty pieces that we can come up with? And actually, your best avenue, because of the turnover, like they talked about, would be just to have that on file. At any time that individual goes to the doctor, you just send that paper with them.
Oh, send a physical paper with.
Yeah.
Correct. It's
Yeah.
because on file,
Yeah,
good luck, especially the university.
Right,
It's
sure.
such a large facility that it would be tough. So
Okay.
we find in our claims department, we'll vouch for it, that it's just easier if you have it may be 3 or 4 pieces of paper, but anytime they go to the doctor for a checkup or original evaluation, just send those pieces with them and then they have them all identified.
So do I understand you right that part of what you are going to provide is helping us facilitate or implement some of those pieces, like that practical piece that you just mentioned? Do I understand that right?
Yeah, we will assist you guys
Yeah.
in anything you want to do. Just know that we're not gonna come in and take over. We're not gonna come in and
Right.
direct you. We're not gonna come in and tell you what you have. I mean, we're gonna
Right.
give you some pieces that you do have to do.
No, I think the guidance would be good.
Yeah.
My concern is that we talk about it in here and then who was gonna do that? You know, it doesn't happen, right? So if
Right.
we have,
Right.
some direction on how to do it.
And we have Dean and Stacy are gonna be attending our safety committee meeting in February.
Okay.
Which has a mix of staff members as well as department heads.
Okay.
So, kind of filtered down, hopefully, that we'll have not just supervisors saying that you got to do this. Hopefully we'll have buy-in from those around the table that aren't supervisors saying, this is serious, that we've got to do this.
Yeah, okay.
So.
and is that something like Josh and I could support from the employee committee side, or?
You can certainly come to the safety committee. I mean, we do, we meet. We've got our schedule set for the year
It's
for
usually the first Wednesday.
first Wednesday of the month.
At 1 p.m.
First Wednesday. of the
Wednesday.
month?
Yeah. I believe-
But I think next month we're February 15th, I think is what I told
Yeah.
Stacy.
Yep.
Where is it at?
Fire station.
No.
Oh, we're gonna be moving here.
Oh, right.
Because there's Wi-Fi here.
We've had some struggles.
There's Wi-Fi there too, it just sucks.
It's in the
Yeah.
other, not in
Oh.
the meeting room that we're in.
Oh, okay.
And we've had some challenges on the fire side with the Wi-Fi and set up where we need it. So.
Yeah. Is it unheard of for a city to like contract an independent occupational therapist to come to the worker? When things are like that, like we have a medical facility here, so we would partner with them, but. Or is that just no, that just doesn't happen, Dana?
No, it really doesn't have, no.
Okay. That's okay, you don't have to
Be-
explain
be-
it.
Or because part of the problem we're having, even when we are sending folks to our occupational health, they're telling us that they don't have an appointment time for them,
Yeah.
and they can't get them in, or it's gonna be the
Mhm.
next day or something. So I think we had one instance where we had to send somebody to urgent care because it was something that needed to be taken a look at.
Yeah.
And occupational health wasn't gonna get them in, so we
Yeah,
made that decision that we had to take them to like an urgent care to
Yeah.
see.
And the real goal here is to drive your claims down to a point that you don't have to send anyone down to occupational health.
Right.
Have a relation to work, right? So we're talking about the claims aspect of it.
Right.
It's good, and claims act, that's part of driving on the cost. Most important is just preventing the injuries in general.
In the first place.
So yeah, once you get your claims low enough, it would be real hard to justify paying your own health doctor if you have staff.
Mhm.
So then the last piece I'll go over, once again, this is the last piece of financial information. So in your time with us at the pool, you did get experience modification down to 1.82. It was your second year into the pool, but we had you down to 1.82. So if we compare that premium versus what you've been paying us in every other year since, we have collected from you guys only $255,000 more in premium. So if you compare that to the $600,000+ that we, or almost 960 plus that we paid out, you can see how the numbers aren't going to sustain themselves for very long. But also on the flip side of that is if your people hadn't gotten hurt, you would also have $255,000 in your budget to be able to spend on equipment or personnel or whatever you needed to. So, so within the high level RMAP program, some of the requirements that we have for the city, and we'll send this agreement. I'll send this to Dave tomorrow. And so the process, I'll get the right documents come up, I apologize. Some of the requirements that we have, again, monthly safety meetings. If I'm not in attendance, then we do need minutes submitted back to us. You need a sign-in sheet from your employees that were there. We need documented incident review. So if you have monthly safety meetings, in February's meeting,
Where we have all that, Brittany takes care of our minutes, she tracks all of our trainings.
Okay,
She actually, Adam prepares the incident reports. We talk about them, what's gonna change. And so we can make sure that you have all. of
yep,
that.
so we just need those all rolled into your minutes, so to speak, and then submitted to us. So you will do new incidents, so in your February meeting, we would want you to look at least January's, and if you maybe do the 15th to the 15th, however you want to do those. And then we would want follow-up, so in February's meeting, what happened in December, and we recommended some follow-up information, or this is what was supposed to be done, was it completed, and who was it completed by? And then we also want to see training review, so I know Brittany's taking care of some of the online training, if she can do a report monthly that says these are the departments that have completed training in the last month. We like to see those going, as well as your written policies, so we spoke about return to work policies, there's been, we've got pages of assessment questions that we asked during that site visit that I did with you guys. Those written policies, whether they need to be created or whether they need updated, maybe it's something that it's been a couple of years, so let's review this and make sure it's still accurate. And then any upcoming safety issues. So the big ones would be like your parks department, when you start hiring those sorts of employees, what types of seasonal issues are you going to run into with some of those employees, or your pool, anything along in those lines. Those would want to be brought up at that time too. Anytime we do an incident review, again, we'll want those sent, whether they're, and they can be inside the safety committee meeting minutes, that will be okay. But we need to make sure we do have those incident reviews. And then we're gonna come in as safety and risk improvement. And we're going to do some training with you guys. Some of the trainings that we will include in those is supervisor safety training. So what types of liability do your supervisors have? We'll do incident review training, and then we want to see,
Yeah, those two right now.
Okay, yep, so it's those two trainings. So what we're gonna ask for is a morning. Essentially, we're gonna want 4 hours of your management time to go over those trainings with the managers. And then we're gonna want to see some policies, either verified that they're still in existence or completed again, return to work, your designated physician or provider, and then again, your incident reporting policy. So we want to see to make sure that your employees know that it is their responsibility to make sure that the company nurse number, which is that 800 reporting number, is completed within 48 hours of the moment.
Can you say those 3 policies one more time?
Sure.
I got return to work and
yep.
the incident reporting policy.
Yep, and the designated provider.
Designated provider.
Yeah, the one we just
Thank you.
And the one thing is, not only is it important that we see that you've updated it, but that they're getting used. One of the things that we have found is we'll have our members that will pass them. And then that's the end of it. And a policy does you no good if you don't
Right.
follow it and enforce it. So like the late reporting, that puts all of us in a bad situation when an employee doesn't report a work comp claim immediately, as soon as you know. We've got people that come in and say, well, I tore my shoulder. Well, that was 5 days ago. So you've been in pain for 5 days and haven't figured out. As far as we know, we gotta slow everything down, do our due diligence, and research it. In the meantime, this employee is gonna be sitting there hurting. They might incur medical bills that we're not gonna pay until we are sure that it happened on your behalf. And so we have a lot of entities that now have policies that if you don't report in 24 hours, we can't deny the claim, but they will be written up.
Okay.
So that's kind of the outlay of how things we're going to want to see for the next 2 years at a bare minimum. Like we talked about earlier, your premium, though your experience modification factor is dropping, your premium's not going to move a whole lot. Rates have dropped. We don't have any control over those. So you may see a little bit of a decrease in those. But as far as our board and our underwriting department is concerned, we need to see some buy-in from the council and your employees that says we want to be a good member of this pool before we can offer you some of those discounts back. So that's going to be our first step.
I think everything is very positive, but the one thing I would say, and we've had these meetings with a few other of our members. The level of losses that you've had, frankly, if you were probably, and Travis could probably confirm, if you were probably out in another insurer, they probably would have canceled you by now. Okay, we're a pool, we want to try to work with you. But as our board came across with this policy in the 2-year, we need to see sustained effort. We want that 2 years to create a culture. Not just a program, but a culture where safety isn't something we do, but it's how we do it without thinking about how we're doing it. You know, in that sense, it is just natural. And again, if you're able to do that, and we can start bringing those losses down, then, you know, our board, the rest of the pool members, we want to keep you in if you're going to be that committed.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you can't follow these things over the next 2 years, then we're gonna have, I mean, anytime we get the feeling that you're not doing it, you're gonna get 30 days notice of cancellation.
Yeah, I'll confirm that, after the train accident, most private for-profit carriers are canceled. Just not understanding what was going on, how could a claim like this happen, it's kind of a silly mistake, turned into a big claim, right? But the IMCW has stepped and stayed with the last few years, even if it hasn't. Now, you guys have kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde, real losses, there's a bad year, that's a good year. Bad year, that's a good year. It's kind of that, okay, we turned the corner, we not, obviously, there's been some turnover in the leadership and the pandemic, and so I think that will get some steady, and it's probably a good time to implement these things, so we're moving forward in that regard. And the other reiterate, because they're a pooling mechanism, actually Iowa's a very restrictive market when it comes to work comp pricing. The state basically sets pretty firm, very firm, I should say that, they are firm limits on how much discounted a private insurance company can give to a client. For IMCW, their pooling mechanism really doesn't have that floor. They've given longevity credits and good loss credits, and there's lots of things that they can do that that the private entity can. So short-term, long-term, IMWC really is the best fit for the city, and I'm assuming Dave and Lee have buy-in to them, and just want to make sure you guys are on the same page.
You know, and I'll say, you know, pools came about mainly because the big companies did start just cutting cities back in the 80s and 90s. They just said, we're done.
Interesting.
And that's really how, I mean, I don't know about the pool here, but I know the pool that I was a part of in Missouri, they came about, it was 25 cities that insurance companies just basically said, we're not covering. So they put this pool together, and it's grown into be quite, I mean, it's a huge pool now, but it's grown bit. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if we were with Travelers or some of the other ones, they would have just
Been gone.
thanks to see them. Yeah, that's just the way it worked.
Well, the other thing, we're non-for-profit. And our goal is, one, help you protect your employees. And two, we actually want to help you get that premium as low as we possibly can. Help you earn all of the discounts that you possibly can and keep that money here in the community. That's why we do upfront discounts. So, you know, we're committed to you. We just need you tonight to show you are committed to us. You got the right guy. I mean, I work with Dave at Nevada. He knows what needs to be done. He's done it in Missouri. You know, we just need you guys to give him the support, be behind this, buy into this 100%. And, you know, not to say tomorrow that if an incident happened, you're gone. We're gonna, you know, we've all dealt with cities and county, an administrator, she's worked for a county. We're gonna look at the claim. You know, if you got an officer that, you know, somebody decides they're gonna take a shot at him and hits him tonight, we're not gonna sit there and say, oh, you're gone.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's something stupid, preventable, then we're gonna have a whole different kind of discussion.
It sounds like basically you're telling us this is very serious.
This is very serious, yes.
Good
Good.
interpretation.
Yeah, our relationship relies on this.
I understand.
And just the consequences if I am to say we're gonna not, again, this is trying to be a threat, but There is a mechanism within the state of Iowa, most states in the union have this, and if a private entity does not provide your workers' compensation to assign risk pool, there's a heavy penalty if you have to be put in that pool for this, so you probably pay double what you pay today to do so. So, yeah, on all levels, it's good for the city to buy in and move forward with making a safer work environment.
Mhm.
So what questions do you guys have?
I think we've asked along the way. I don't know. Other than, yeah, I am on board with making sure that we make this happen. I just want to make sure that we have the support necessary to do it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Stacy's been really good to work with. Like I said, I've known Dean a lot of times, so I'm sure that Stacy will make a few more frequent visits and we'll make sure that our folks are there and available and they understand it. Like we told our folks in Nevada, safety is a condition of employment with the city. You know, that's just what we told them.
Mhm.
And it went a long way. If, you know, quite frankly, if you're not gonna work in a safe manner, you know, we'll cut our loss and we'll
Hire someone who will.
we'll hire somebody that will, and it may cost us a little bit to get rid of that, but in the long term, it's still gonna be cheaper than
Sure.
the alternative. So,
Well, Dave, we'll look forward to, are you gonna bring us a report then, bring the council a report?
we'll work with Stacy and see what we need to do and make sure that we have things going the right direction. And like I said, you know, if you'd like to attend our safety committee meeting, it's gonna be on the 15th of February here, because we'll have a combination of some department heads and some staff people. So
So we can rely on you to bring us up to date and
Stacy will keep me informed with what we need to
Okay.
do, and as I get stuff to her that she needs, I'll make sure that you're aware that we've met those.
And we get a monthly report, all of my accounts, there's a monthly report that comes to us as far as anybody that's had a claim, so anytime that West Liberty, we're gonna knock on wood, they don't, anytime they appear on the report, we'll reach out to Dave. And then we'll help you through those processes. Again, the return to work, we're gonna make sure that those things go smoothly and that those get initiated and all those different pieces. It's the ones before that happens. So it's the company nurse type stuff that's gonna be on the city to make sure that those.
And you'll provide Dave with like an outline of what you need.
Yep, so there'll be an
Okay.
agreement that he'll get emailed, and I put a deadline on there, but I wasn't thinking that maybe you won't have a council meeting between them and then it has to be signed off by the mayor, so.
What's the deadline? Our next meeting is 7.
I think I needed to the 15th of February.
We're good.
Yeah, so it'd be good if, I think if you could bring some kind of report to the council, maybe certainly after that February safety meeting, just to kind of reiterate, you know, what's been done between now and then. I think that would be great. Possible.
did you have a question?
I was gonna say, I can always summarize our meeting minutes.
Brittany does a real good job of documenting all of the discussions that happen in our safety committee, and she
Oh.
keeps all of our records, and she's got a binder with all of our, and all of our departments have their binder with all of their different safety.
Would it be inappropriate to maybe just start including that report in the council packet? On
We
a
can do
monthly,
that.
on a monthly basis? Yeah.
We have a number of cities that do that.
We just keep on top of it that way. That sounds good.
You know, one of the things that we just added for our folks was a program called Binder Works. It's an app, and it has all of the different chemicals or the MSDS sheets that would be in any of our facilities. And we did it citywide versus by department, because a lot of
Yeah.
buildings have the same thing, but all of our employees, and we're gonna have some training on, here's the Binder Works app. Now, if you need to find out if you get exposed to a chemical, you can go right to that app, you can look up and see exactly what
Yeah.
needs to be done. So.
Sounds good. I'd like to move to tax levy if we can. So is there anything else we need to hear from?
I'll make a little recommendation for you just to help with the record. It's something we've had a very successful with our clients is have, for your safety meetings every month, have each department, just a random employee, not a supervisor, not someone in charge of it, just have them come with a safety recommendation. It helps them get ingrained to look for things that are unsafe. And then in that meeting, you talk about it and say, can we do this? Or can't we do this? And there's a response to it. So usually like on a break room wall that put, here's all the recommendations we had, here's what the committee has agreed to or not agreed to, and you have 30 days to address it on the next safety meeting. But building that safety culture, having individual employees find items, could be bad cord, could be, you know, didn't have the right safety glasses, anything, just, it could be the randomest thing that ever, as long as they're looking for that. And that employee should change every month. So Jim does it this week, Sally does it next month, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and we do that training on self-auditing training that we can do for it. To help employees learn how to do that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So, last thing I just want to bring up real quick, April 10th and 11th is our one-day safety university in Des Moines. It's free for our members. So if it's something that you want to come to, it's an all-day event. We provide lunch this year. It actually, we're gonna do an active shooter training and a tour of the new Urbandale public workshop. So that starts Monday night, then the workshops are on Tuesday. I encourage you all to come in, and the nice thing about that is it's an opportunity to visit with your peers. You know, talk about how you guys doing this, and so free of charge. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Yeah.
We have,
I made you recall.
okay,
Thank you.
we have a half an hour, does anybody need a 5-minute recess? Are we okay?
I'm fine.
You're welcome, thank you.
So inside your books, you will find, the proposed property tax levy. This is your this is the publication. And then I also provided a printed copy of the, special report from the League of Cities.
In the book.
In the book, and there should be, if you don't have one, I have an extra one here.
Right there. I think it was in the front.
I don't think I have one
They
either.
don't, I didn't.
Okay.
I
They
used
have
it
this if you when you were doing.
So did I. Start bringing the old pad.
I have one. That one? You don't have one? I'm not seeing it.
Should be
Yeah.
inside your front folder, if not.
Oh.
Oh,
I got one of those.
Instead.
Have one.
Okay.
Here.
You're good. I thought you were,
No.
I thought you meant this thing.
Yeah,
that is.
No.
Another one attached.
And then yes, that's.
The chart. But I picked mine up yesterday, so I don't know if it just got missed or.
Yeah, we put them in there today, so.
Mine stopped in
then
kind of
that's-
earlier today too.
Yes, okay.
Yep, so.
So, with the proposed, the tax levy, that is a requirement. It was updated here a few years ago that cities are required to, the first step to budget preparation is to post this, proposing our tax levy certification. And what we're doing here is entering in what we are proposing that we're going to levy for these specific line items in our budget. And the reason is that it's more geared toward the public to provide them an opportunity to know ahead of time what their total tax levy is going to look like for the general property tax. And then your emergency, your self-insurance or your tort, your liability that covers all your buildings and your vehicles. And then you have your benefits. And the idea is, again, it's that early communication to the public to say, this is what our total tax levy is going to appear to be for your property taxes. That's what will be taxed. Your 810 is the maximum levy that the city can tax. So that impacts your regular general that's at that top there. That is the amount, that's the highest that we can tax for. This year, it looks like we will have an increase for $777,984 versus what had it been in the past. And there has been a multiple of things that can impact that. One being there has been changes within the taxation. Some communities around us are actually reporting 100,000 to even more of a loss. And what it was is the commercial rollbacks and the change in how taxation works with commercial property. Because you now are taxed for, if within that commercial property, if you have residential, the taxation is,
The first 150,000, they're gonna be taxed at a residential rate before they start paying on the commercial rate going forward.
And a lot of our businesses have the residential.
correct. And also, we do not have a lot of commercial property. We have more residential property. There has been some new, we've added some new housing. But that's not gonna be a significant of 100,000 right away. It's a multiple of those things, but that would be our primary. We still have the rollbacks. The rollbacks are continuing, and as you're reading through, I know I had forwarded you some emails, with some documentation. Just trying to prepare you coming into the budget season, talking about, how does property tax work? And when you're looking at the general fund, how does the property tax, what's the highest? What department, utilizes the bigger part of your property tax? And so with the special report, it's a more in-depth talking about everything that's going to impact the budget. And what they're providing to you in there is also information to help you better understand, if we have to increase a budget number, it's because of this. If we see a reduction, it's possibly because of this. So it's just to help better educate you and guide you through why the numbers will look like they look. At this point in time, our overall tax levy is 10.91. The purpose for the calculation of the 10.91 is because I'm also leaving into the levy that we will have debts. So part of the bond that we're working on passing, we are going to have to levy that debt through property tax because it's a general obligation. And so that goes in line with the discussions that we've had with our financial advisor, is that we're trying to set a 2.25. So we do not want to run our entire tax levy rate over a certain point. What that does is because I don't exactly know what the debt will be or how the interest rate will work out, I'm levying on the lower side of things because I do not want our community members to be impacted, to take it up to an overall 17 or 18%. We want to try to maintain that at 15 or lower if we can. Because then there's consistency with what we've been doing. We still are able to borrow money and we're able to, levy the debt, but at the same time, that should not impact our community and increasing what they have, paid over the last 4 years on an average.
Help us understand this chart that you have. So the 10.91 I see over on the far right, that's called total tax levy.
Yeah.
The bottom line, the tax rate,
Yes.
help us understand the
Yep,
difference between
so the
those.
bottom line, the tax rate for fiscal year that we're currently in now, we set our total tax levy rate at 14.69. And so for budget year 2023, the 12.26 was numbers that we proposed to be on the lower side of it. And then the actual budget year proposed maximum is the maximum that we're proposing. So what that means is that by the time we get to our budget, we can't be below the 12.26 and we can't be above the 13.6. So what it's saying is it's trying to average out that nothing above 2% can change.
So you're recommending that the tax
I'm trying to be protective of our community members because we don't know what the debt levy is going to look like. We don't know if the bond will cost us where it increases that levy up to you know, 17 or 18, and that's what we're trying to avoid to do. We don't want to create, a higher taxation overall. We want to try to maintain. And again, I know when we get more into the entire budget, when we get to that point and I'm able to, put that debt number in there, if we passed it by then you'll get to see the overall, what that tax levy rate will be.
So this, oh, go ahead, go ahead. I was gonna say, please forgive my ignorance, warning.
No.
So we have to, you know, get money for the Rainbow Maxon Drive. Explain the process of doing that, because if a person just looked at our numbers, like, oh, we have $15 million. Why do we need to get a loan for a project like that? And I, again, forgive my ignorance.
No,
That's a good question.
it's not, and again, these will be things that we'll identify when we're going through the bigger part of the budget. Because the $15 million for the city are made up of restricted money.
Got it.
So
Okay.
those monies are restricted and can only be used for those purposes.
Like the utility fund accounts.
Utility funds, your
Yeah.
trust and agency,
Yeah.
equipment reserve, those all are specific earmarked dollars that can only be used for certain things.
We
can't-
can't just take that money.
When we don't use a lot of that, because we don't, it has to transfer the next year just for those specific purposes. So we can't just add another project, is what you're saying, because those, we don't have the money for that.
Well, we have, based on our valuation, you have a debt limit that each city has, and it's 5% of your total valuation.
Okay,
But you don't want to ever get up to where you're at 85, 90, 95, 100% of your debt capacity, because if something happens and you don't have anywhere to go. So
yeah, yeah,
that's why, you know, we've tried to keep, I think, prior to my coming, the previous council wanted to keep the debt service levy at a certain number. So kind of what we're doing with Nate, and if you recall from him coming in, the first
I
few
missed that
years,
one, which is why I asked all the questions.
the first couple of
Yeah.
years, we're only gonna be paying interest. We won't be paying any principal. But and then as some of our other debt that's under our debt service levy starts to come off, then you'll start seeing that get ramped up to where we'll start paying, you know, more, we'll start paying the principal and more principal to get that down.
And we'll have to, and then again, so you do have the opportunity as you're going through the bonding. Right now, we set the bonding to be paid 100% by property tax. But we do have the opportunity to work with a financial advisor and say, and break it out and say, we want this percentage to be property tax, this percentage will be local option sales tax, this percentage will be TIF. This percentage would be utility. I mean, we do, but at this point in time, we're moving ahead with 100% of it being. And this was all incorporated under a capital improvement plan, and it was identified then as to how those projects were going to be bonded and paid for.
But for next year, is that a conversation we can have? Or is there a certain period where we have to use that 100% until we can make those?
So, I mean, those are discussions that, you know, again, from a financial and management, those are things that, you know, the only purpose why down the road you would want to divide it up is because you see a significant loss in your property tax. Or if you're not able to levy, or if council is adamant about, they don't want to go to 18%. So then that means that we are going to divide out that, so we're not having to levy for the entire payment. So that's where the discussion would be, the fiscal discussion of saying, we're going to use X amount of dollars from local option, we're going to use the X amount of dollars from a utility, because we absolutely don't want to go above 16 for our total tax levy.
Because when you're looking at things like TIF, keep in mind that there's other expenses, other areas that we're financing through TIF. So you don't want to just say, hey, you know, let's utilize TIP and all those other avenues that Lee had mentioned. Because we are capturing those avenues through other means of financing other projects. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the way we're doing it now, and correct me if I'm wrong, by financing 100%, it through the loan agreement is probably one of the most conservative ways to do it. And it was recommended by our financial professionals to do it that way, because that way we're not putting other things in jeopardy to finance it when we can finance it this way under this loan agreement at a really good rate. Okay, so that our interest rate won't drain us versus draining smaller accounts that we can utilize those funds in a different way. Is that right?
Yep, and I'll just add on to it. So for example, what Councilmember McFerren is explaining, so we do have the opportunity that we could utilize and draw from local option sales tax. But if we draw from local option sales tax, then what it can do is impact other capital improvement projects on streets. That are smaller projects.
Yeah.
So
No, I
it
get
takes
that.
away from that.
Yeah, I get that now that you guys explain it. That's really helpful. I'm just thinking like, what kind of assessment is done? And maybe this isn't even something that the council typically does. It's something that you would work with a financial advisor. Do they take into effect how the economy is and how we live in a low income community, you know, and if we're doing the same thing every single year, but not taking into effect how different the economy is and how families might be struggling more than last year and stuff like that. Is it just something that we need to put on our calendar to talk about?
So to answer your question, I mean, when we're doing those things, we probably don't. For the bigger part of it, from a fiscal, we're not looking at it in that, how do I want to say? I would say that our focus is a little more broad, and that is because we know that the economy, whether it's good or bad, I think the thing is creating the consistency, so no matter what, we're not a part of causing those additional costs. I mean, there are, you know, I mean, roads have to be, and that's part of the reason why we do this. I mean, we have to improve our roads.
And not just for improvement, but for safety's sake as
for
well.
safety's sake. I mean, I'm trying to think, you know, the entire infrastructure, even not just with the city, but you go to the state, go to the federal government level. No matter what the economy is, those things have to be, you know, done just exactly for safety reasons, for, you know, economic development reasons, and, you know, things like that. But I think to the best that I can answer is being, you know, aware of how the economy and the impact is, being aware not to increase that rate. And keep it, and that's what council is saying is, we're not gonna go over 16%. So that means you have to manage that, the levies that the numbers that you're plugging into for those benefit levies and those other levies, will keep them low. So then when we have more of the picture on the general obligation, then again, that would be, I think, the best I could answer to you is our fiscal management, to be diligent not to add additional taxation on top of what we've consistently been doing.
Or pay
That
more
helps.
in the long run.
Yeah.
For the interest rates, we wouldn't necessarily have to.
Right, I get it.
And the other part of that is, again, with infrastructure and having the plan and continue. The other thing is to, it's not only just with property tax, I mean, having a capital improvement plan to make sure that we're maintaining and fixing is, again, it's impacting utility rates, it's impacting all of those things. So having a good plan in place and taking advantage, or just like you said, making a hard decision to say, we can't proceed with that project because of this reason.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, that helps a lot. I appreciate it. I just know like some families property like $100 more mortgage a month impacts you considerably more than it would maybe 2 or 3 years ago if you had $100. And I'm not saying it's gonna be $100. I'm not saying that, people. I'm just like putting it hypothetically, so.
There, so in some of the information that I had emailed,
Mhm.
there is, there's some. I believe, if I remember correctly, there's some really good pie charts, or there's some really good information there. Because what, our taxpayers don't understand, and of course, I mean, because we have nothing but time on our hands, right, to think about how this all breaks out.
Right.
But we're just a small percentage of that entire pie. So when somebody pays property tax, there are other entities that are your school system.
Yep. that's true.
There's other entities that are, there are getting the funding from that property tax. So the city of West Liberty doesn't get 100% of what that individual pays. And so I would recommend, looking at that too, because I think it's also helpful when you're asked that question on the street, it's like, well, I pay, yes, but
that's a really good
we're
point.
only collecting, a
Sliver, yeah.
for
And
that
it-
percentage of that.
And I believe whenever you get, if you're a property owner, you get an assessment from Muscatine County.
Yeah.
And on the back, I believe there is a paragraph or whatever, a listing where it gives you the percentage and the entity that's collecting that.
Yep.
And at this point, the school district is collecting more property tax than the city is.
So generally, you will find that school districts typically do raise more property tax, so other municipalities.
Yeah,
But, and it just depends, because you'll have, in some places you'll have your county tax, you may have like, I've had like special road use districts will have a tax like in Missouri, so there might be, like in Missouri, was that we had 10 different taxing authorities that made up our tax bill.
yeah,
The city, generally is probably the second or the third, but
right.
your school district typically is the
Is
larger
the-
portion of what your total property tax bill goes for, but that's.
I mean, it
part
might
of
be like,
education.
might be 38 or 39% that goes to the school district, and it might be 36% that goes to the city.
Right.
So again, right at the top, so that 96, the number at the top.
Yep.
That is the city's tax valuation. That is what the total value of the property in the city, commercial, residential, everything, that's its value. And so then those percentages are calculated based off of that. So our 810 is based off of that. And so, because in these sheets, so on my worksheets, I can see the actual percentage. And so in these sheets, it doesn't show you that. But that's how it's getting to that 10.91, is because it's adding those percentages of what each one of those are taxed at. And that top number is that's your 100% total taxable valuation. Right?
I promise I won't ask.
No,
more
no.
questions.
No,
That
I
was
mean,
really, really helpful.
You should be asking.
So more than likely, if you have a question, more than likely somebody else has it.
Yeah.
So it's always good to ask.
Okay, yeah.
Any other questions then? Right,
So I just would close with, if I haven't provided you information, please utilize the League of Cities. They have a lot of wonderful tutorials out there that really are helpful to better understand as we're going through the budget. Because if you've been, when you've been working those numbers for a number of years, it's like with anything, when you've been doing the same job or you've been doing those things for many years, you forget about good questions just like that, because you know it, right? And so I think I would encourage anytime to always ask those questions and always, look out to the league for anything, not even just with the budget. There's lots of wonderful resources out there for you. Thank you. That's it.
Sounds good. Thank you.